She didn't raise her voice. She didn't stomp her foot. She just looked up at the tall white banker behind the marble counter and said, "Sir, I just want to see my balance." And the entire VIP lounge turned to stare, like a little black girl had just committed a crime. If this already made your blood boil, tap like, and subscribe so you don't miss stories where justice finally wins. The banker, Ryan, leaned back in his leather chair as if the request physically offended him. His lips curled into a smirk. "Your balance?" he repeated loudly enough for everyone to hear. A couple in designer coats paused mid-conversation, glancing at the girl like she didn't belong there. She stood quietly, small, calm, holding a plastic folder against her chest. Her name was Aaliyah, 9 years old, brown skin glowing under fluorescent lights, braids tied neatly with purple beads that clicked softly every time she moved. Ryan crossed his arms. "Sweetheart, this is the private wealth desk," he said slowly. "You don't just walk in here. You need an appointment and a guardian." His voice dripped with fake concern and real contempt. Aaliyah didn't blink. "My grandmother sent me," she said softly. "She said this is the counter I should come to." A burst of laughter erupted from behind, a white woman with a diamond necklace whispering to her husband. "She probably thinks she won the lottery or something." Ryan chuckled with them. "Look, kid, the regular banking area is downstairs. Go try your luck there." Aaliyah didn't move. "Sir, I'm supposed to check my balance here." Her calmness irritated him. He snatched the folder from her hands. Inside were neatly stacked documents, an ID, a letter. He didn't read them. He just scoffed and tossed them onto the counter. "Cute, but this is for real clients. People who actually have money. Not..." He looked her up and down as if she were dirt on his shoe. "This..." A few people shook their heads at the cruelty. Most just watched, entertained. Still, she didn't flinch. Her voice remained steady. "Sir, please, my grandmother told me you would know what to do." Ryan rolled his eyes and leaned forward, mocking her. "Oh, really? And what's your grandmother's name?" "Huh." Aaliyah lifted her chin just a little. "Naomi Carter." The room didn't react. Not yet, but Ryan was about to. And when he did, everything in this bank would change. Ryan let out a dramatic sigh, grabbed a keyboard, and typed her grandmother's name with exaggerated sarcasm. "Naomi Carter? Sure, let's pretend she's some big-shot millionaire." Aaliyah stood perfectly still, hands folded in front of her. The purple beads in her braids clicked softly as she breathed. Around them, the wealthy customers leaned in with thin smiles. The white woman in pearls whispered, "Kids these days, always imagining things." A man in a navy suit added, "She's probably here for a school project." The cruelty wasn't loud. It was a quiet, polished kind that hurts even more. Ryan hit enter on the keyboard and froze. His smirk slipped. His eyebrows twitched. His eyes narrowed at the monitor. He typed again, quicker this time. Then again, his jaw tightened. Aaliyah watched quietly, noticing every flicker on his face. "Is something wrong, sir?" she asked. Ryan didn't answer. He tried to lock the screen. His fingers slipped. He tried again, hands suddenly sweaty. The woman in pearls noticed a change. "What's taking so long?" she asked sharply. Ryan didn't look at her. He didn't look at anyone. He just stared at the screen, like it was a bomb about to explode. Aaliyah stepped a little closer. "My grandmother said the system might surprise you." Ryan swallowed hard. "What did you just say?" "She said you'd understand once you typed her name." Ryan pushed his chair back. No, this must be wrong. This must be a mistake." He clicked through more pages, more tabs, more files. Every page made his face go paler. He wasn't smirking now. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't mocking. He was scared. Aaliyah tilted her head, innocence mixed with something sharper, something deliberate. "Should I come back later, sir?" she asked softly. Ryan shook his head quickly. "And no, stay right there." The white couple behind her exchanged glances. "What's going on?" the man asked. Ryan didn't respond. He just kept scrolling, and his breathing got heavier. A soft chime rang from his computer. A red notification flashed on the top right corner. Priority account flag. Executive verification required. Several customers turned toward the sound. Ryan's heart pounded. He reached for the intercom with trembling fingers. Aaliyah's eyes followed every move, calm, patient, almost expecting this. Ryan pressed a button and whispered, I need the floor manager. Immediately, code 47, the lounge went silent. Everyone could feel something shifting, something big, something none of them were prepared for. But Aaliyah simply clasped her hands again and waited, as if she knew this was only the beginning. The floor manager, Cole, arrived with the stiff smile of a man who thought he'd been called for something routine. But when he saw Ryan's face, the drained color, the shaking hands, his smile collapsed. What's the problem? Cole asked. Ryan didn't speak. He just pointed at the screen. Cole leaned in, read the top line, and froze. The moment his eyes widened, Aaliyah stepped forward and delivered the mystery hook. Quiet, sharp, intentional. Sir, why is my name showing up in places children aren't supposed to see? If this happened in front of you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you stand for fairness, hit subscribe. Cole straightened slowly, adjusting his tie with trembling fingers. Aaliyah, just wait right here, okay? He didn't look at her with pity. He looked at her like she was holding a detonator. He rushed out of the VIP lounge. Whispers exploded instantly. What did he see? What's happening? Is this some kind of investigation? Ryan didn't answer anyone. He just stared at Aaliyah with silent fear he could no longer hide. Aaliyah stepped closer to the counter. Her voice was gentle. Sir, you don't have to be scared. Ryan swallowed hard. I'm not scared. But his trembling hands betrayed every word. A customer in the back, a loud man with a Rolex, snapped, Hey, are we going to stand here all day? What's so special about this kid? Ryan hesitated, his eyes flickering between the man and the girl. Then he whispered, barely audible, You have no idea. Aaliyah tilted her head, studying him. Did the system say something? Her tone was innocent, but the question hit him like a slap. Ryan pressed his lips together. I can't discuss private account information. But you weren't worried about privacy before, she replied softly. A few customers gasped. She wasn't raising her voice. She wasn't challenging him. Her calmness was somehow worse. Before Ryan could answer, the glass doors of the lounge swung open with a hiss, and a woman in a charcoal business suit walked in with a type of authority that made everyone straighten up. Her name tag read, Victoria Hale, Regional Director. Ryan nearly stumbled trying to stand. Ms. Hale, I didn't. There's a problem. Victoria held up one finger, silencing him instantly. Her eyes moved around the room, scanning faces, until they landed on Aaliyah. And then her entire expression changed. Not confused, not irritated, recognizing, remembering, knowing. She stepped forward, voice low. Aaliyah Carter? Her tone carried something no one expected. Respect. The room felt the shift. This wasn't just a child anymore. This was someone important, someone powerful, someone they should never have mocked. And the real story was only just beginning. Victoria stepped closer, and the silence inside the VIP lounge sharpened like a blade. Even the customers who had been laughing minutes ago straightened their backs. Ryan tried to speak. I was just following procedure. Victoria didn't even look at him. Mr. Whitfield, she said calmly, you haven't followed a single procedure since this child walked in. A few customers exchanged uneasy glances. Aaliyah stood completely still, purple beads resting against her shoulders, eyes steady and unblinking. Not scared, not angry, just waiting. Victoria crouched slightly to meet Aaliyah's eye level. Your grandmother, she said softly. Was she expecting you to come here today? Aaliyah nodded once. She told me you might be busy, but that you'd understand. Victoria's breath caught. It was subtle, but everyone saw it. She rose slowly, and when she turned back toward Ryan, the softness disappeared. Now she spoke like a woman used to giving orders that ended careers. "Show me the screen," she said. Ryan hesitated. It was the smallest pause, barely 1 second, but enough to expose his fear to the entire room. Victoria stepped behind the counter, and when she looked at the monitor, the thin composure she held cracked. First her eyes widened, then her jaw tightened. Then she inhaled sharply, like someone just punched air from her lungs. "Who accessed this?" she demanded. Ryan's voice trembled. "And me," she asked. "I didn't know. I thought you would just what?" Victoria snapped. "A child? Someone you could humiliate for fun." He froze, staring at his shoes. Victoria turned back to Aaliyah. "Do you have the envelope?" Aaliyah opened her folder and pulled out a sealed, slightly aged envelope with handwriting elegant enough to belong in a museum. The moment Victoria saw the script, her hand covered her mouth. Then she took it with the careful reverence of someone holding a final message from a legend. "She wrote this?" Victoria whispered. "Yes," Aaliyah said, before she passed. A soft murmur rippled through the room. Before opening it, Victoria addressed the customers, her voice firm, commanding. For those watching, this child requested a basic service. What she received instead was discrimination, mockery, and violation of protocol. That ends now. The room went still. Even the wealthy customers who'd been laughing earlier lowered their eyes. Victoria broke the seal on the envelope. Her eyes raced across the page, and her entire posture changed. The director who walked in, determined. The director who read that letter, shaken. She looked up, eyes burning with urgency. "Everyone," she said, "clear this room. Now." No one questioned it, because whatever was in that letter, it was bigger than any of them. The VIP lounge emptied in seconds. The wealthy customers who had smirked at Aaliyah earlier suddenly couldn't get out fast enough. Ryan and Cole stood frozen near the counter. Two men about to watch their careers fall apart in slow motion. Victoria locked the glass door behind the last customer, turned and faced him with a cold, precise authority. Then she lifted the letter again, her voice dropping to a whisper as she read the next lines. Her eyes trembled. When she looked at Aaliyah, she spoke the genius hint hook, not to scare her, but because the truth inside that letter demanded attention. Your grandmother didn't leave behind money, she left behind power. Enough to shake this entire bank. If you believe talent can silence every insult, share this video. And to everyone watching from the US, UK, and Canada, your voice matters. Victoria closed the letter slowly, like someone sealing a chapter she dreaded for years. "Mr. Whitfield," she said to Ryan without turning her head, "do you know who Naomi Carter was?" Ryan swallowed. "A client." Victoria stepped toward him. She wasn't just a client. She was one of the most significant silent investors in this institution. She funded branches, expansions, and emergency loans that saved executives' careers. She paused, letting the weight settle. And her granddaughter now holds the controlling rights to every share she owned. Ryan's knees actually buckled. Cole grabbed the counter to steady himself. Aaliyah stood quietly between them, a 9-year-old girl who suddenly felt like the tallest figure in the room. Victoria continued, her voice sharpening. "This bank doesn't exist without her family. And we let her granddaughter walk into this building and get treated like she didn't belong." She turned to Aaliyah, tone softening again. "Your grandmother didn't trust everyone here, but she trusted me to handle this when the time came." Aaliyah opened her folder again and revealed a small device, a digital recorder. "I recorded everything that happened today," she said softly. "My grandmother told me, always keep the truth." Ryan nearly collapsed. Victoria nodded in approval. "She taught you well." At that moment, the glass door swung open again, not from customers, but from a man in a sharp charcoal suit carrying a leather briefcase. He walked straight to Aaliyah. "Miss Carter," he said with a respectful nod, "I came as soon as I saw the alert. I'm Marcus Hayes, your grandmother's attorney." Ryan's face drained of all color. Marcus opened his briefcase, pulling out contracts, documents, and a thick file with a gold emblem that read, "Carter Holdings, Executive Authority Transfer." He laid the papers on the table. "Shall we begin?" he asked Aaliyah gently. And for the first time since she walked in, she gave a small, confident nod. The same nod her grandmother must have made 1,000 times when she changed the future of the city. Marcus spread the documents across the polished conference table. The gold emblem shimmered under the lights, and Ryan stared at it like it was a blade about to cut his entire life in half. Marcus tapped the top page. This file contains every recorded violation, every discriminatory remark, and every breach of service committed by Mr. Whitfield during today's interaction. Ryan's mouth opened. No words came out. Cole whispered, "Ryan, what did you do?" Marcus answered for him. He mocked a minor client, racially profiled her, violated privacy protocol, and attempted to conceal high-priority account information belonging to a major shareholder. Aaliyah stepped forward. "I didn't want to record anyone," she said softly, "but my grandmother told me the world doesn't always believe little girls who look like me." Victoria nodded, proud, furious, protective. Ryan finally found his voice. This can't be happening. I didn't know she was." Aaliyah cut him off gently. "You didn't have to know who I was. You just had to treat me like a human being." Marcus opened another folder. "This is the termination clause for misconduct under executive review. Because of his actions today, Mr. Whitfield loses his position effective immediately." Ryan staggered back, as if the words physically hit him. "My job," he whispered. What about my benefits? My pension?" Victoria answered, voice cold as marble. "When you humiliated her, did you think about her grandmother's pension, her dignity, her family's legacy?" She shook her head. "No, you only cared about power you didn't deserve." Ryan looked at Aaliyah, desperate now. "Please, I have a family." Aaliyah's eyes softened for a fraction of a second, but she didn't step back. She didn't fold. "My grandmother had a family, too," she said. "And she told me something before she died. She said, people like him, they only learn when consequences finally meet them." Marcus placed the last document in front of Ryan. "This isn't just about your job. Your conduct today triggered an automatic audit of all accounts you've managed. If any other complaints surface, criminal charges may follow." Ryan's legs buckled again. Cole whispered, "This is bad, this is really bad." But Marcus wasn't finished. "As for the branch," he said, turning to Victoria, "Miss Carter now holds enough voting power to request administrative restructuring." Victoria nodded, then considered it done. Ryan looked around the room, defeated, drowning in the consequences he created with his own arrogance. And Aaliyah? She stood calmly in the center, the smallest person there, but the only one still standing tall. The conference room felt colder now, not because of the air conditioning, but because the last pieces of truth had finally settled in the air, heavy and undeniable. Aaliyah stood by the long glass window overlooking the city. Her small reflection stared back at her, purple beads catching the light. For the first time since she walked into this bank, she allowed herself a quiet breath. Marcus packed the files back into his briefcase, careful and methodical. Victoria stood beside him, arms folded, eyes still fierce from everything she'd witnessed. Ryan sat hunched in the corner, the reality of his downfall hitting him in waves. His expensive suit couldn't protect him. His title couldn't save him. His arrogance had destroyed him. Aaliyah turned away from the window and faced the room, but her gaze wasn't on Ryan. It was on the empty chair at the head of the table, the one her grandmother had once sat in during meetings she was never credited for. She always said people would try to talk over her, Aaliyah whispered. People who thought money made them better. She looked down at her small hands. "She told me the world won't change unless someone reminds them who built it." Victoria stepped closer, her voice soft. "Your grandmother didn't just build wealth, sweetheart. She built the kind of legacy that forces the world to look at itself." She placed a gentle hand on Aaliyah's shoulder. "And today, you honor that legacy." Marcus nodded. "Everything that happened here will be documented. No one will rewrite the story. No one will twist it. You stood your ground, Miss Carter, and that matters." Aaliyah walked past him, past Victoria, past the empty chairs. When she reached the door, she paused. Ryan lifted his head, eyes red, face pale, completely broken. Why did you even come here?" he asked. His voice wasn't arrogant anymore, just hollow. Aaliyah held the doorknob but didn't turn it yet. "My grandmother said one day I'd meet someone who would try to teach me my place." Ryan closed his eyes, defeated. Aaliyah continued, quiet, powerful, unshaken. "Turns out she was right. I did learn my place today." She stood taller, her voice sharpened with the confidence only truth can give. "My place is exactly where you told me I didn't belong." She opened the door. Victoria followed her out. Marcus walked behind them, carrying the legacy that now belonged to a 9-year-old girl who refused to bow. And as the door closed on a ruined banker, the world outside felt different. Not because it had changed, but because someone finally had the courage to make it. Aaliyah stepped into the hallway. Small steps, a giant shadow,